Hey headphone people, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the first round of the MrAyrit March IEMadness, right? So we've got 16 different IEMs that I've put together in a bracket that I'll put on the screen here for you to see, and hopefully you had a chance to fill out the bracket. Again, the person with the most picks, they're gonna pretty much get their IEM of choice with a couple of exclusions. So this video is going to be the Sweet 16, the first round, and it's not going to be like super in-depth reviews, but I'll give you my quick impressions of each IEM, and then I'll tell you which was the winner of each of these matchups. Before we get started here, let me just let you know how I was testing these. I was doing a lot of A/Bing, of course. And for sources, I was using several different sources. I was using the BTR5 as a source. I was using the Chord Mojo as a source. And I was using the FIO UTWS5 or SW5s. I can't remember which one those are, but I was also using those when I could for all of these. So our first matchup is the KZ EDX versus the, and I'm sorry I don't have the KZ's box, but versus the QKZ VK4. Now these are both, to my recollection, were around like $12, $15, something like that, okay? So that's kind of the price range that we're looking at here for these. And here's what these IEMs look like. So first up, the EDX. Now I know there were several different colors of these. I picked the gray, just like a subtle color here. All plastic, very lightweight. And these are the QKZ VK4s. They are also plastic and very lightweight. And if you look at them side by side, you're gonna notice that they are, yeah, I think pretty darn close to the exact same housing in kind of all aspects. They're very, if not exactly the same, they are very, very similar across the board in how they are put together and built and their build quality and all that stuff. Now, and I wouldn't be surprised, to be perfectly honest with you, if all of these little kind of cheaper Chinese IEMs, I wouldn't be surprised if they all came from the same exact factory. I'm not saying that everything inside is the same, but they are very similar across the board, many of them, and you'll see that as we go through them. Talking sound. So first up, the EDX here. And these guys, I thought they had a lot of bass, very, very big bass, but it's not very clean. It's pretty bloomy. I didn't feel like it had a lot of detail to it, but there is a lot of bass quantity with this guy, okay? I thought, to me, they came off like a bit edgy, so a little bit over sharpened on the top end and on the upper end of the mids. And I mean, it wasn't terrible, but I also didn't think that it was very well refined. I didn't feel like the treble was very detailed either, so it kind of had this bad mix of like boomy bass, edgy upper mids, and treble without a lot of detail. When I switched to the QKZ here, the VK4s, I always thought it was better when I went from EDX to the QKZs. There wasn't a time where I did that where I felt like the EDX had performed better. The bass still on the QKZs are, you know, it's still a bit bloaty and bloomy, and that was like what I found with a lot of these IEMs. Like, the bass is hard to do well in an IEM, it seems like. But I did think the bass was better. I thought it was more controlled, and I didn't feel like it was as edgy as the EDX, but I still thought there was more detail in this little guy. So I thought it was better separated. I thought it was just all around just better. And I think for the money, for just a cheap IEM, I thought these QKZ VK4s did a really nice job. So these are my winners in this round, okay? These guys right here. And now I just want to point out here real quick too, I'm going to show you the box because I'm not sure if this particular style is available anymore. I couldn't even figure out where I bought them from, so I'm not sure. But if you want to know, right, what I have specifically, this is the one that I've got right here. Oh, you know what? I should note too, cables for those last guys. For each of them, they are pretty much equivalent, I would say. So not great cables, either of them. I mean, they worked, but I didn't really like the cables. They're tangle messes. I'd replace the cable if I was keeping either one of these headphones. Okay, so next up, we've got the CCA CSN versus the KZ CRN, the Critical collaboration. Now, the Critical, I really wanted to try the CRN because, you know, Critical has all this acclaim in the IEM world, and it seems like he probably knows what he's talking about. I mean, geez, he's heard everything, right? So I was pretty interested to try this one out. So I got mine in the rose gold, which I think looks quite handsome. And then you can see next to it, here's the CCA CSN, which I got in kind of like the gunmetal color. But again, these are like exactly the same build. You know, when you look at the shape of them, look at the little ports in there. You know, look at the nozzles, like it's all just almost identical, right? So again, same form factor between these two, but these are different from those first ones that we looked at. So build is very similar, heavier than those previous ones. The CCA CSN I think is under $20, whereas the Critical is what, like I don't know, maybe like 40, close to 40 bucks, right? Cables again here real quickly, the same cable. Again, these cables are a step up from those previous ones. They're a little bit nicer, don't tangle as much, but still not fantastic, but better, okay? So setting the cables aside here, let's talk about the CCA CSN. I thought that these guys, I thought they had too much bass again. That just overdid it, and the treble was pulled back quite a bit. So I found these to be kind of a darker headphone. I did think the mids sounded really good on these though. So like mids were great. That was definitely the standout feature of these guys as I was listening to them. This is another instance though where, like, as soon as I switched the KZ CRNs, I immediately thought that they were better. Just bass was much more balanced on these guys and well tuned compared to the CCA CSN, and it seemed like for a lot of these IEMs, I thought the bass was the biggest factor that was like all over the board, and a lot of them had difficulty controlling those lower frequencies. The CRN does a nice job of that. The Critical does a nice job of that. I did think that perhaps it sounded like a little bit tinny in some instances, but all around I do think that this is a really well-tuned IEM, and it certainly beat out the CCA CSN for me. So the Critical moves on to the next round. Okay, so the next matchup that we had in our first round was the Shuoer Tape Pros versus the KBEAR KS1, if I can get that on camera here. So this one's another cheap one, right? This was about $15, and the Shuoer Tape Pros are actually about like $130, and this is just how they randomly got matched up, okay? So not super fair, but that's the way the hand was dealt, right? So the KBEAR is again a very generic IEM. It goes along lines with those other under $20 ones. It shares the same shell. You know, it's plastic, super lightweight, comes in that generic packaging, comes with the same really crummy, tangly cable that those other cheap ones did. The Shuoer Tape Pro is kind of nicer all around compared to the rest of the ones that we've done so far. So it comes with a decent package here, right? You get some extra tips in a case, you get a carry case, all that stuff. Those other ones came with extra tips, but it was really nothing, you know, too crazy to speak of. The Shuoer comes with a nice little package here. The IEMs themselves are metal, and they're pretty sweet because they kind of look like tape cassettes. Like, I think that's why they call them the Tape Pros. Or at least that's what I see, but maybe I'm just seeing what I want to see there. But they're very compact. They're a little bit denser, right? Metal. Have a little bit bigger nozzles on them. So I had trouble. I couldn't really put any other tips on them that I had. So that's just something to note there. But the other thing to note is these actually come with a really nice cable. And the cable itself is actually, interestingly enough, terminated in 2.5 and then comes with a 2.5 to 3.5 adapter. Now, I did find the connection with this a little bit spotty, but I still am glad that they included it, and I do really like this cable. So it is a very nice cable to use. So sound-wise, the KBEARs, they follow a lot of that cheaper IEM trends that we've established so far. So the bass, it's just too much, and it's too muddy and bloaty and bloomy. It's not very well controlled. I thought they did sound quite big, but at the same time they were kind of like muffled with all that bass, and I just thought they sounded sloppy. So I was not a fan of the KBEAR KS1s at all. Like, I really didn't like them and wouldn't recommend them. Certainly I would take any of those other cheaper ones that we've talked about so far over the KBEARs. For this round, really, you're talking an easy win for the Shuoer Tape Pros. Their design is great. Their comfort is great. It's still got a good amount of bass, and it's still not super detailed bass, but I would say that it's better controlled and it's more pleasant than the other ones. The timbre on these I thought was just fantastic, and the mids are definitely the standout for me on these guys. Like, the mids just come through really full and rich and detailed, and I just think these things do vocals and that mid-range just super, super well. The treble, it's detailed. There's detail there. It's not super detailed or anything like that, or super resolving. I would say that's the one area where this thing lacks a bit, is in, I wish there was a little bit more treble presence, and I wish there was a little more treble resolution. And maybe it comes off a little bit congested, but I found that after listening to these for a while, I thought even though they didn't have a lot of soundstage and separation, I still found it to be like a realistic, enjoyable, immersive experience. All in all, I think these guys, they do a really, really nice job. Easy win over the KBEARs. These are a nice little IEM for sure. Okay, so for our final matchup in round one on the left side of the bracket, we've got the 10T4s versus the KZ ZSN Pros. The KZ ZSN Pros definitely aren't as fancy as the 10T4s. Again, they come with pretty generic packaging, and they come with the nicer of the cheap cables. So cables that are very similar to the, cables that are very similar to like the Critical and the CCA CSN. So the build of the ZSN Pro, again, it's not quite as generic as some of the other cheaper IEMs, but it definitely does the same kind of like in your ear part, but it makes it a little bit it's got a little bit of a fancier kind of outside, shell on it. But yeah, still plastic, still very lightweight, still a pretty budget build. Right, the 10T4s, they come with a little bit nicer packaging, and they're just kind of a nicer package overall, and better built and better cables and all that stuff. So they have, of note here, if I can get it out, they come with like this super nice leather wrapped carrying case, which is just, I don't know, it's really nice. It's a really nice little case, honestly, like super nice little case that these guys come with. These guys are MMCX connectors instead of 2-pin, and their cable is nicer. You can see it's got kind of like a little bit of a braid to it. So it's a nicer cable overall. And then if we look at the build of these guys, I've got spin fits on them. I really like these, and I also use final tips too, and I'll link both of those tips down below as well in the description. But if we look at the build of these guys, you can see how small they are compared to the ZSN Pro. So much tighter, smaller little package, and yet dense, right? They're metal, they feel really good, they look cool. I don't know, I was just really impressed with this package and the finish and fit and feel of these guys. Like, I thought was really nice. And I think, you know, they come in at around maybe like $180 to $100, something like that. So for the money, I think the build on these guys is really good in a nice package overall. Okay, so listening to the 10T4s, let's talk about their sound here first. You know, I thought they were a pretty nice sounding IEM. I thought they had decent space to them. I thought they were smooth. I still thought that the bass was maybe not quite right, or not quite where I wanted it to be. But it wasn't as crazy out of whack as some of those other IEMs that we've talked about so far today. I thought they were very listenable and very comfortable. Again, just a smooth, easy listen. Like, all in all, just total package, a pretty nice experience with the 10T4s. The ZSN Pros, I thought, like, they're an exciting IEM. Like, if you're going for an exciting sound that has like a bit of bite to it, these might be for you. I found it to be a little much for me personally. And while it did have like a lot of like information and stuff on the top end, I still didn't find it just like as good of an overall experience. I thought it got like pretty edgy pretty quick for me, and it wasn't something that I could see myself listening to for long periods of time. But I mean, if you're looking for a V-shaped headphone and you like an exciting listen, then this IEM might be for you. So for me though, the overall package of the 10T4s was just better and nicer, and they were just easier to listen and fit my preferences a bit more. So for me, the 10T4s go on to the next round. Okay, so to recap the first half of the competition here, we've got, moving on to the next rounds, we've got the QKZ VK4s, and they'll be heading up against the KZ CRNs, the Criticals, and then we'll have the Shuoer tapes going up against the 10T4s. Right, so those will be our matches for the second round on this side of the bracket. But let's head over to the right side of the bracket and we'll go through the first round of those at this point in time. Okay, so the first matchup on this side of the bracket, we've got the Moondrop Starfields versus the KZ ZSTs. Now, the Starfields, these are both kind of fan favorites, right? So the Starfields, if you've seen anything about them, you probably know they're metal. They got this cool paint job on them, right? They're a pretty highly regarded IEM that costs about maybe like $100, maybe a little bit less than that if you catch them at the right time. So they just are beautiful, and I don't know if we'll catch this right in the camera here, but they do have this like chameleon metal flake paint job. I don't know, they're nice. They're very nice looking. They do come with, I don't have the original packaging, but they do come with a little case that's like just big enough to get them into. So I wish it actually would be a little bit bigger, but it does come with a case anyway. And then their cable is a little bit nicer than the cheaper stuff here. So it's kind of in that mid range of cable qualities for what we've tried so far. The KZ ZST is again one of those cheaper IEMs. It's the same style as most of those other cheaper under $20 IEMs, and these were maybe like $17-18. But these things, they had on Amazon like almost 10,000 reviews, and they were rated really highly. So I thought it would be worth getting a set of these to throw into this mix, maybe as an underdog that could come out on top. Okay. Nothing really to note of the packaging or cable of the ZSTs, same as the rest of those generic, cheaper Chinese IEMs. Okay, so I found the ZSTs to have decent bass compared to so out of like these, cheaper IEMs, these were one of the more better controlled bass. It was still strong. I thought the timbre was pretty good on these guys. They were pretty treble forward, right? So that's good and some bad. That does give these like a decent sense of detail and space. but at the same time, they could be a little bit sibilant. So I could see if you were looking for a cheaper, more exciting IEM, I could see you trying out the ZSTs, right? I could see somebody going for those for sure. Now the Starfields, these are a more laid back, right? They're smoother, they're a more easy listening, which I just think kind of fits me better overall. I still think like the bass I wish was a little bit better controlled and maybe a little bit tighter, but it's pleasant, like it's pleasant bass with reasonable amount of detail. The mids are back a little bit more on these, which isn't super into my preference range. I wish they were a little bit more up front, but all in all, these are good resolution, good detail, all around a pretty balanced sound. I just wish those mids were just a little bit more forward, but either way, these guys are my winner for this round. I thought they pretty easily beat the ZSTs, okay? So the Moondrops are moving on. I doubt that surprises anybody though. Okay, so second matchup from this side of the bracket is we've got the IE300 from Sennheiser, and we've got the one more quad driver. Now both of these came with some interesting packaging, so I got to show you this quad driver one first, because this thing, out of all the IEMs here, this one comes with, like, look at this, like, packaging that this thing comes with. So pretty crazy considering I bought this thing new for like, I don't know, $60 or something. And like it legit comes with some of the nicest packaging out of any of these. It comes with a ton of tips, adapters, all this stuff. You know, nice little kind of leather wrapped case here, and like this folio style packaging. So kudos to One More for including all that stuff. Now these were, oh, they're not even in there. So now, interestingly enough, with the One Mores here, these are the only set of IEMs that I tried that had an attached cable. And while this cable isn't bad, I'd say it's probably on par with like the mid-tier cables that were detachable here. I'd prefer it if it had a detachable cable, so you could put on your own if you wanted to. Their build quality is quite nice, I would say. Nice finishing, metal. Yeah, I don't really have complaints on it. These are reasonably comfortable. You know, these are kind of like old school style where they just like, you know, they just go right into your ears instead of like wrapping up and around and things like that, which actually I'm okay with. I mean, I'm getting used to the loop around the ear type of thing, but that, I don't know. That's just, for me with glasses, I don't like that as much. Like, I kind of just like being able to just like stick it in there, but I get why the other thing exists though, and how most people would probably lean towards that. So all in all, the One More, just really phenomenal packaging on that thing for how cheap it is. Now the Sennheiser here, obviously it comes with kind of its own legit package. I'm just going to show you just real quick just what like the box looks like, you know. It's a nice little package that it comes with. You do get a nice little carrying case with it, some extra tips, you know, all that stuff. And then here's the actual, you know, units, which are just super lightweight and small. And right, that's like a good thing, right? Like they're a nice little, very compact, probably the most compact out of any of these IEMs, and lightweight. So very nice. They're MMCX connectors. The problem is like it is a little bit of a deeper connector in there. So why this was an issue for me is because I wanted to test all these with the FIO UTW S5 or UTSW5, something like that, right? And but they don't fit. Like my connectors, the connectors on these guys are too chunky, and it's too deep on the IE300, so I couldn't use them with these, which was a bummer for me, because I do really like those, and I'll do a review for those here before too long. But yeah, you can just see how teeny tiny these Sennheiser IE300s are, which makes them just super comfortable and nice in your ears. Like these things were probably the most comfortable out of any of these IEMs, so really good in that regard. Super lightweight and comfy. And their cable is decent as well. Again, I would say mid-tier, cable. It's not the nicest cable of the bunch, but it was a good cable that I don't have any problem with. Okay, so sound-wise, the One Mores, they're very, very mellow. Very, very mellow, very dark. I thought a bit muffled sounding, although I would kind of get used to it after a while. I thought the bass was pretty decent on them. For me, it's an all in all just too dark of a sound signature. The treble is definitely lacking in these guys. So you're not getting a ton of detail. You're not getting much for sparkle as far as that goes. But they are easy to listen to for long periods of time, and you do kind of adjust to the muffled nature of them. But I didn't find them particularly enjoyable or exciting to listen to either. Jumping over to the IE300s, and instantly when I listened to them, I thought, nothing sounded glaringly wrong with them. I did think that there was maybe a bit of a veil present, and I did note that I might want a little bit more air on the upper end. But the bass was quite enjoyable on these guys, and they had really good separation, I thought, was one thing that I noted with them. And I thought, these, number one, they're the most comfortable out of any of these IEMs. And number two, the sound I found to be pretty agreeable in most tracks. Now, one thing that I thought was interesting on these is I just got an Asgard 3 with a built-in multi-bit card that I'm kind of experimenting with on my bedside table. And so going from just the BTR 5 to these, I thought that improved them quite a bit. And on the Asgard 3, I thought these things sounded really nice, and I thought they tightened up a little bit and became a little bit more detailed. So I don't know, these might be an IEM that could scale a little bit more than some of these other ones here. So all in all, I thought these were pretty decent IEM, and they certainly beat out the One More quads, but I don't think that probably surprises anybody either. So our next matchup here was one of the more interesting matchups, I thought, in this first round, and it's the BGVP ArtMagic VG4 versus the Thieaduio Voyager 3s. Now, both of these headphones come with a decent amount of stuff here that we kind of got to go through. So the Thieaudios, right? You get some tips. You get a really nice cable with these, and you get probably my favorite carrying case out of all these, which is just this little metal. It's a leather wrapped metal pouch that just kind of flips open and closed. It's big enough that you can fit a little player in there, like the BTR 5 or something. So I really like that about these guys. So definitely like the case for these. And again, like I said, the cable is quite nice. One of the nicer cables of the bunch here. And these are the ones that are, of course, they got the gears, the kind of clockwork style, which was, pretty interesting design choice, I feel like. Now, the ArtMagic VG4s, they also come with a decent amount of stuff. They've got a more generic, just kind of nylon carrying case that they come with. But these guys did come with a bunch of different tips and things. And these tips actually are for different tunings, which I thought was pretty interesting. So another cool thing about both of these headphones is that they have tuning switches on them. So if you can see on here, we've got tuning switches on the back of the Thieaduio Voyager 3s. And then we've got the VGA 4s, and they have 3 different tuning switches on the side of them. So you got tuning tips and you got tuning switches for the VG4, which is pretty cool. Now we get into this again here where we've got, these are both Chinese, and they both have that same exact form factor almost. like as far as their shape and the way the switches are and all that stuff. So that's kind of interesting as well. Again, the VGAs or the VG4s, they come with again one of the nicer cables of the bunch. So cable wise, I'd say the Shuoers actually have the best, and then I'd say the Thieaduio and the ArtMagic VG4s here have the second best cable of the bunch. Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. These are actually the Legacy 3s and not the Voyager 3s for the Legacies. So let's talk the sound of these guys here. So I thought they sounded a tad muffled. I didn't feel like they were super high resolution in their presentation, but I did think they had pretty decently controlled bass. I did think, though, kind of as I was listening to them, that the detail was definitely lacking on these guys. The timbre was good on them, though. I mean, so they sounded pretty natural. They're just a little muffled and not a ton of detail. But they do come as a pretty complete package. I just thought when I was comparing them to the VGA 4s, just these guys just had such better detail in them. And the bass is good in these. It's very well controlled. I did find that these come off to be like a bit shouty and nasally. You know, and then like this too was pretty interesting in that, like, when I changed the tips, this did really dramatically change the sound. I ended up using the final tips on these, but like I was surprised how much the sound changed when I switched tips. I preferred just the default tuning on these guys, so I did try all the different tunings on each of these headphones, and just for me, just kind of the flat default tuning for the VG4s was what I preferred, and they, to me, I just thought were kind of all around better than the Thieaduio Legacy 3s. Okay, final matchup of the first round. We've got the Blonde BL05s versus the BL03s, both kind of shiny chrome metal IEMs here, and they both kind of come with this packaging, right? I don't have the BL03 packaging anymore, but it's the same thing, you know. And of course we've got the classic Belief, Let Music Burn, Oppity, Never Give Up, whatever, if anybody ever figured out what that meant. But you know, it's cool. It's a kitschy little thing, you know, to do with these blondes here. Now, both of these IEMs I actually think are very well built, especially for the money. You know, you can't complain about them in that regard. Now, they are fingerprint magnets, of course, but you know, definitely solidly built. You know, the BL03s, if you have done any research about these, which you probably have, honestly, if you're watching this video, you know that the fit can be pretty weird on these guys. And to me, that is their downfall, is they're hard to get in my ear the way I want them to be in there. And you have to play around with different tips, and I just could never get them to work really well for me as far as fit goes. So that's a pretty big knock against them in my book. The BL05 has a little bit easier to use form factor. It's very similar to the Shuoer tapes. So even though they don't really look a whole lot alike, they do kind of share that same form factor, but the blondes just don't. They don't go in your ear quite as much as the Shuoer tape pros do. So let's talk sound of these guys. And I know the BL03s, like, they're pretty well loved in their sound. So just a warning, this might be a bit controversial for a lot of people, but I preferred the BL05s. I thought the BL05s, I thought they had tighter bass than the BL03s. I found the bass a bit boomy on the BL03s personally. I didn't think it was great on the BL05s. I just thought it was better. The mids were a little bit more forward, had a little bit more bite to them, which I enjoyed. I did think they could come off maybe a bit shouty at times, though. But I thought the mid-range was just, in general, much better than the BL03s. I thought the separation was also better, so just kind of the technical ability of these I thought was better. I also like the treble on these a little bit better than the BL03s. I found that the BL03s, they're smooth and pleasant, but I wanted more mids, I wanted more detail, but I hate the fit of them, and just the treble, like, I thought was nice on these. Like, I thought these do treble really, really well, but the rest of the ranges, they didn't agree with me, and the fit doesn't agree with me. So for me, if I'm choosing between the two, I'm choosing the BL05s. And I know a lot of people wouldn't make that choice, but hey, this is the MrAyrit IEMadness, right? So these are just my subjective takes on these, on which ones I would pick if I was choosing between them. And for me, it's the 05s. So not a huge margin that they won by, but they did win out nonetheless. Okay, so to recap the right side of the bracket now, the ones that will be moving on to the next rounds are the Starfields, the IE300s, the ArtMagic VG4s, and the BL05s. That will be our matchup. So BL05 versus the ArtMagic VG4 and Starfields versus the IE300s. And that will be round 2. And that will conclude the first round of the March IEMadness. So I will update the brackets, put that on screen right now. You can see what our matchups will be next time we do this, which should be in just a few days here. And so we'll do the Elite 8, and then we'll do a video for the Final 4, and then we'll do the championship video. So I hope you enjoyed this. It was fun to do. It's honestly, like, it's a lot to go through all these IEMs, and I don't know how I would have done it any other way than just putting them head to head and seeing who won. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Comment, like, I'll leave links to all this stuff down below, as well as some of the accessories and things I mentioned. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next round. Probably want to subscribe so you don't miss that. Thank you.